Alright, this is Patrick from Endurance Nation, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about cycling peaks. In the forum today, I log on and see that Chris is looking for a Cycling Peaks 101 tutorial, and someone else wants a PowerPoint and everything. Nothing like showing up in somebody's house and telling them you want some really free, high-tech multimedia stuff. But, in response, I'm up to the challenge. I'm up to it. In response, I'm going to do a little video stuff here, with the caveat being one, you can't see what I'm talking about, so you're going to have to listen along with your own copy of Cycling Peaks going. And two, Rich and I are going to be firing up a online power webinar where you can go right ahead and follow along with us on the screen. That's going to be full of diagrams, information, everything. Rich has a couple guys in the house that are going to do the back end technical stuff. It's going to be really cool. That should be coming out, I think, in January of 2008. So hopefully this will just kind of whet your appetite, maybe fire up a little bit of discussion and go from there. So what I'm going to talk about today is just what I have on my Cycling Peaks homepage for myself, what I think is most important. I've got my own little copy of Cycling Peaks right here on my little crappy laptop. As you can see, you can't really see what's on my screen. The camera resolution's not so great. But I'm starting off, for those of you who are visually oriented, right here, with my power distribution chart. And on the power distribution chart, what I've done is I've made it large, and I've set the bucket increments to 10 watts. That kind of lays out a full description for me of what's going on, and also I've got it set on the last 28 days. This is kind of my de facto way of checking in on how my wattage is doing relative to my functional threshold. Of course, that will change whether I'm doing steady work in a base building session or whether I'm doing higher end intensity work. But it does give you a quick snapshot, which is awesome. So again, 10 watt increments on this bucket. Your functional threshold will be the largest percentage drop on the right hand side of that chart as you go down. You can actually scroll your mouse over each column and see what the percentage change over what the percentage overall is in terms of total ride time, and then find the largest drop. And that one where it drops down the largest is roughly your FTP on a rolling basis. So the next chart that I have here for me is my mean maximal power for my last 28 days. I like to take a look at this. And the buckets that I have are my peak 1 minute, my peak 5 minutes, my peak 20 minutes, and my peak 60 minutes. That's more of an in-season function, the peak 60 minutes. In the off-season, if you're doing a lot of trainer work or shorter interval work to boost your FTP, like Rich and I promote within Endurance Nation and the EN off-season groups, the 60-minute, peak 60-minute mean maximal really not so useful to you. But the 1, 5, and 20 are. A lot of the higher-end interval work you're going to be doing over time will be building to that 20-watt increment. So it's a great place to kind of track all season long. I like to take a look at it, and obviously each workout I'm kind of setting a goal for myself on paper, and then I try and follow up with that goal when I'm actually doing the workout. So the next item that I have on my chart here is the mean maximal power curve. It's got my 28-day window as a solid line, and then it's got the whole season as the dotted line above it, so I can kind of compare the two lines and see, all right, if this is my season line and this is the last 28 days, why am I so low? In my case right now, the real-time line is lower than the season line because I'm in the off-season and I'm just kind of cruising around now after Kona. But it's interesting to see sort of where my 30-minute power output is vice where it typically is during the season. And in this case, it's definitely lower, which is where I want it to be. The next item down, training stress and intensity factor for the last 28 days, just a handy graph to have. Good to kind of take a snapshot at and decide, hey, you know what, look, I've done 3 hard days in a row, I need to back off 1 day here on the bike. So definitely a useful tool, I recommend keeping it up. And then the last chart that I have on my page, and it's a series of charts, is the Performance Manager chart. Much underutilized by athletes and worthy of perhaps 2 or 3 webinars in its own right. With my Performance Manager chart, the quick and dirty, the edits that I make to it, I keep the chronic training load at 42 days. I keep the acute training load at 7 days. I make training stress balance. I make that into bars instead of lines. If I make it into bars, it's a little bit easier to differentiate it from the lines. In fact, I even add another data field for training stress balance, which I set as a line, as a different color, so then I have all the bars with a line across the top of it. Let me see if I can kind of hold this up for you so you can get a good look at it. Oh man, I can't even see it. Okay, so you can see the bars there are in yellow, and then there's a red line across the top. That right there is my training stress balance. And then across the top here, I have some other icons for you. Man, it's doing this all in reverse in this video cam. It's freaking me out. So I got some other items up here, and those items in particular are Let me see. I've got my 20 watt mean maximal again, just the same one from the mean maximal chart above, but here graphed over my season, so that gives me a sense of where I'm performing in relation to my overall season, or rather within the performance manager chart. And then I also have the 60-minute normalized power, which is 60-minute normalized is approximation of your functional threshold. So I have that plotted out on the graph as well, so I can see my volume goes up, what happens to my 60-minute P norm, or AKA my undercover threshold, and I get a sense for where I've seen the most improvement and where I haven't. Most of the times it's where I think it will be, i.e. my threshold boosts up when I've got a bit of a recovery period because I'm able to execute better on those tests and in those workouts. But sometimes that may not be the case, and plotting it out here in the Performance Manager chart gives you a chance to take a look at that and identify some things you might not otherwise have realized. Below that, I have Performance Manager charts detailed in for set blocks of time. So in my 2007, I went back and took the last 12 weeks going into Lake Placid, which I feel I executed pretty well before my race. And then I made a 12-week block leading up to Kona. And I just stacked them one right on top of the other one. And so I've got my Placid chart up here and my Kona chart down here, and I can actually map out the days, how am I doing, and basically try and recreate the positive experience that I had in Placid by emulating it down below and creating the Performance Manager chart that I want. So while the Performance Manager chart can be a retroactive tool to go ahead and look back, it can also be a planning tool as you mirror what you've done in the past with real-time what you're doing now. So that's it. That's the quick and dirty Cycling Peaks 101 overview from Coach Patrick at Endurance Nation. Like I mentioned, there'll be a lot more stuff coming out, including a full series of webinars on Cycling Peaks and training and racing with power for triathletes. You just go to EnduranceNation.us, and if you don't see it there, then go to EnduranceNation.us/forums, and there'll be information posted there about the webinars coming up. Okay, hope that was helpful, and I'll catch up with you guys later. Gotta go outside and go for a run. See ya.